won't jump into too much detail maybe, but like just quickly do it so, quick and painless like a band-aid. So yeah, so the first thing, this is a project we worked on in Bombay called Toit. So, I mean, guys from Bangalore will be very familiar with this brand. It's one of the really cool microbrewery brands, like really great beer. And it's got like this sort of cult following. And they were coming to Bombay for the first time. So one of the things that we did, with them in the first few meetings was to, and they were occupying the site, which was recently left by Blue Frog. So the thing is, so this is an important part of the brief because Blue Frog was one of the, premier Bombay nightclubs. Like everyone in the music industry and everyone who visited that place was already in love with it. And the whole of Bombay was actually gutted that Blue Frog is leaving. It was like an end of a 10-year music project. It's made the career of so many musicians and so many artists, and people have had legendary nights at Blue Frog. So we were given this dubious honor of actually, doing a new fit out in the same site that this icon had exited, right? So one thing that we kind of realized early on is we'll have to reformat the complete experience. It has to have no reference to what existed earlier. And at the same time, to provide something that is equally magical and equally fun, right? So what we started doing, the first meeting, we pitched to them this idea of what if the Machu Picchu site had a love child with a Chettinad home, right? So so the idea is that, I mean, this obviously was on the back of the fact that Blue Frog was a heavily excavated site. They had like multiple levels. The whole site was left in a complete mess. And we realized that instead of having a fit out that comes in and starts from scratch, we could work with the excavation. So we started working with the idea of the ruin and a multi-leveled kind of a fit out. And the idea was we didn't have much of a reference to Toit in Bangalore. So we didn't want to bring too many direct elements from Bangalore. But we felt maybe just the light quality, the quality of light that happens in Bangalore, we could bring that to Bombay. So what we did was we opened up the entire roof of Blue Frog. Blue Frog was a nightclub. So as soon as you open up the entire roof, you get like this magical light that comes into Bombay. And these are some of the initial sort of, so this is the kind of quality of light that the place suddenly gets. And it becomes like this really kind of magical topography where you can discover corners for yourself. Like what we also did in this case was normally AC ducts are kept on the roof, right? And we didn't want anything to interrupt the experience of the roof. So we've actually put AC ducts in the floor. So what you can see is in a few places, you'll start seeing small pop-ups which cool the whole space at 6 feet without actually cooling the entire volume. So it's more efficient. And at the same time, it's, it works with this whole levels idea. And at night, you can light it up like a fort or a topography. So it creates like almost a illusion of what level is where. And the space is actually also designed in a way that it looks full even with 75, 80 people, or it can, but the top capacity is almost 300. So once it can become a sort of a shapeshifter venue depending on who's coming in and how they're using it. So that's some sort of stills from Toit. And this I would still say was a fairly fairly obvious kind of a design process. This project is this nightclub called Smokehouse Room. And in this case, what we tried to do as part of the process was to essentially alter our own consciousness, right? So you experiment with a whole bunch of different kinds of substances that would bring you there. And, under many dubious circumstances, like we kind of try to get into this psychedelic kind of, frame of mind. And the idea was to kind of understand the grammar of what a mushroom does to your brain, right? So once you actually see these kind of melting forms, like there's a certain, where form, music, lighting, everything melt into one. And the idea was to kind of build out that experience in actual space. So we worked, in fact, with Kriti on this. She did this beautiful identity for Shroom. And we developed a palette of forms that would then, start being used in multiple ways. And that's one of the first chairs that we designed. So the same forms then start translating across the whole space. The idea was that, when you're in the space, nothing feels like it stands out. Everything has to be heavily customized. Everything has to feel like part of this very melted sort of a whole. And that's one of the contractors at Shroom is pointing to the Qibla and praying namaz in one evening. And of course, this went into a fairly fair amount of detail. So there was these kind of forms were, then interpreted with different materials, with projection mapping, with a whole bunch of different kinds of material, I mean, all kinds of different manifestations. That's the sort of finished restaurant space. So you have this very pristine white sort of a fit out, but what you're seeing here is like multiple different kinds of materials, all heavily customized to fit into this kind of curved site. And at night, the whole thing becomes a very, very like a very illusory, very sensory playground. So you have, and there's no edges, there's no kind of, there's no 90 degrees anywhere. It's all kind of organically sculpted almost. So what this project actually entailed was me to be on site for almost 6 months, because each and every radius had to be drawn on site. Like you can't really issue drawings for a project like this, because everything is curved in 3 dimension. So we had to then, stick pieces of flexi-ply all over the site to define radiuses. And then, because, I mean, obviously we don't have access. So this is also back in, I think 2006. So we didn't have access to too much digital fabrication, none of that stuff. So this is all very, very done by hand. And that's some visuals of the club. So the idea was to kind of also develop the same forms, but the nightclub explores them as shadow. So you have a sort of a form language that goes through. This is another project very close to heart, so the Smokehouse Delhi. And one of the things that we did for this one was, so this project actually started in parody, right? Because for the first meeting, we went to this really fancy mall in Delhi called Emporio. And at that point, I remember when we were just about taking up this restaurant space, there was another restaurant in the same mall, which had just spent 4.5 crores on their interiors. Right. So, and this was a time when restauranting was seen as something which is very, very fancy, extremely aspirational. You have to blow a lot of money to put up a restaurant. So the first thing was to, buy chandeliers and velvet. And that was the whole paradigm of, like, when you say luxury in restaurants, that used to be what people were doing a lot. So what we decided was, what if we take the other extreme and say, let's spend 250 rupees on our entire wall covering budget, right? So what we did was we bought 25 markers at 10 rupees a piece and started drawing on the walls. So we first painted the entire restaurant white, and that's me with a lot of Red Bull, sort of drawing the whole restaurant. So this took almost 35 days of drawing. So in the morning, we used to be doing the fit out and, most of the other carpentry work. And at night, sort of sitting and drawing on the walls. And what this actually started off was a process of, very, very close interaction with work. Because what we normally do in a process is, you create a set of drawings. At least in design and architecture, you create a set of drawings, and then there's some other person or some other agency who executes it. But the illustration was very, very tied up with the design of the cabinetry. So everything had to be conceived of in a 360-degree kind of a way. And as you start drawing, you realize that each and everything needs content, right? Like, so if you're drawing an audio cassette, what is the name of the artist on that audio cassette? Or if you're drawing a book, then what is the name of the author on that book? So all of this becomes storytelling, right? So after a point, after halfway through this project, we realized that everything is going to be a massive amount of storytelling. So if you're there in Smokehouse Delhi, you realize that the name of the artist on the audio cassettes is the same music that you're listening to in the restaurant. So we actually then curated playlists, and we made, so you're walking into someone's mind, essentially. You're walking into someone's mind, and everything that surrounds you is part of that kind of real estate. And obviously this, it just kept getting more and more detailed. So as you find props and objects, start painting them white and drawing over them. I used to fly from Bombay to Delhi whenever they got a new alcohol sponsor, because above the bar, they had these logos. And we were very particular about the style of illustration, because no like staff guy could stand up and do it with a felt pen. Like, you have to, go and draw the new logo. So in fact, Riaz used to bill my flight tickets to the alcohol company, saying that my artist needs to fly down from Bombay to change whatever. And so we did a whole bunch of these. I mean, that's me drawing on the facade outside, and it went fairly detailed. And then we also got shortlisted for the Restaurant Bar Design Awards in the UK. And I think this is when even the brand, even when the clients started understanding that this brand has legs, it's something that can travel, it's something that can scale. It was never supposed to be a scale fit out. It was always supposed to be a one-off. And I mean, no one in their right mind would have thought of a hand illustrated restaurant as a scale fit out, right? So we also got like punched in the nads with this kind of development. And then they created a whole brand around it. So this hand drawn identity became their website, it became their photo shoots, it became a whole bunch of things. And this is the one in Lower Parel in Bombay. So and then what we realized at the end of the first fit out was that we can almost create a small city museum using Smokehouse Delis. So what happened, it became a city love project, like that let people in Bombay fall in love with their city once more when they come to a Smokehouse Deli. So this is the one in Chandigarh. And in fact, when we spent like a day in Chandigarh, we realized that this whole exposed concrete, exposed brick kind of thing that's outside is a massive contrast with what people are living inside the house. Like you'll have purple sofa, pink something, silver legs, and they're living in this exposed brick Corbusier kind of a building. So this is huge tension between in what modernity has left behind and what people's actually aspirations and lives are. So we used Smokehouse Deli in Chandigarh to populate it with every single thing that Corbusier hated. Right, so we did a lot of research and find out all the art movements he had boycotted. So he was a huge so there's a lot of like soft toys, there's Art Nouveau kind of decoration in the frames. It's all the exhibitions that he boycotted. We've put their posters inside the Smokehouse Deli. So it's like a huge almost like a slap in the face of Corbusier modernism. That's the one in Indiranagar. So this is again a huge place. Like my arms hurt when I think about Indiranagar also. This is like 3 stories of drawing. Then on Lavelle Road, we took an interesting constraint. We thought, what if we look at everything that's in this restaurant is only on Lavelle Road, right? So it's not even a big Bangalore story. It's just a Lavelle Road story. And we then jumped into research about, who was Michael Lavelle. He was actually one of India's first gold prospectors. So that's a drawing at the back of the gold mines in Kolar, where he bought that land and then leased it out. So you can actually go very, very deep in research and then manifest all of that research in space as well. This is an interesting one. So if you see at the bottom of the frames, you see a small QR code. So this is the one in BKC in one of these bank buildings. So what we thought is we'll research and find out every single scam that bank has ever done in the past. And we've put QR codes that take you to the stories of that scam. Right. So there was Standard Chartered and Citibank both. So all the dubious projects they funded, every single controversy, you have illustrations that link back to those stories. So if you're there with a smartphone, this will open up those links on your phone. Then that's some illustrations from Phoenix Mills. That's the one in Bandra. So this became fairly like a pan-India fit out, which we were doing for almost 10 years. And after the point, it also became a group project. Like so, some amazing people have worked on Smokehouse Deli even after the first 10, because we worked with Kriti, so she did the ones in Delhi. She then collaborated with an architect, Amit, who designed the Delhi places. And they've obviously given it their own, they've made it their own, and they've taken it into a whole new space. Like her walls are full of calligraphy and Ghalib and poetry and a whole bunch of really, really beautiful things that we could never imagine. So it's obviously now become a project much larger than us in the studio kind of sense. This is a fun one. So this is actually a residence project called the Folly House in Pune. And what we started this was our brief from the clients, right? So they said it was a 2-word brief, and we had to kind of make sense of all of it after that. And once we started thinking about the grammar of mistakes, you kind of realize that mistakes are held in this very nebulous kind of soupy space where many informal interactions can play out. So we started drawing, almost auto drawing the grammar of making mistakes, right? So this is some of the first concept drawings that we were creating for the space, and those concept drawings led to a new way of thinking about the house. So we thought the first response of when you live in a house is to live in rooms, right? That's what our main kind of metaphor for living in homes is. And we thought, what if we bust that and call it living amongst enlightening objects? Enlightening objects, right? So we started populating the entire house with just 16 objects, which would then take care of the entire functionality of the house, right? So we started saying, what is a sofa, right? Like the sofa is essentially a place where you sit. It's a place, it's a surface to sit on. right? So now what are the different surfaces that you can sit on? So you can sit on a horse, you can sit on a couch, you can sit on a slide, you can sit on a, you know, under a cave. There are so many kind of ways in which you can extrapolate the postures. And we started building out a sofa based on 7 postures, right? So you start crunching all these 7 postures into one piece, and that's what the sofa looks like. So it's this kind of extremely playful topography. The sofa means different things to different people at different times. So when the kids are playing, they use this as a playground. They kind of slipping and sliding all over it. The other side of the topography is a formal living room, which kind of faces each other. So you can actually create a cozy corner. You have parts of the sofa which are only used for privacy. So if you sit on that, you can read your morning newspaper. So it's a topography, but it's a mixture of all these kind of different ways of interacting with the sofa. Then this is the living room. So we started. We thought, you know, we'll just crunch the whole living room into one cube, and so that's their entire living room. And the grooves that you see on the floor are actually custom-made channels that allow this whole living room to kind of open up. So it starts opening from the back. That's their library. And then the whole living room kind of opens up. So you have these 2 work desks that expand from the center. The front opens up as a TV console. So what you're left with is not, you're left with a lot of relationships, right? Like the relationship between your couch and your TV is only created at the time that you're watching television. That relationship is broken and destroyed and mutated when you're not watching television. So the idea is that this house, you know, commits to a way of thinking that is extremely flexible. It keeps people thinking about their house. Otherwise, typically homes become a static backdrop to our lives very soon. So the idea is that this house is as much a part of the family as the family itself, right? And that's the relationship between the TV watching and the kind of living room space. And we made a whole bunch of different relationship maps between all the different objects on this in this house. That's their dining table. So the dining table actually swivels 360 degrees depending on where and what you're using. So if it's used as a buffet table, it kind of swivels between the 2 columns. If it's used as a breakfast table, it swivels the other way around, so it faces the outside area. That's their main door. So the main door, we actually designed it like a cabinet. And we thought, like, you know, the main doors normally has no functionality, but the main door needs the most functionality, because in this case, what they've done is they've instructed their milkman, their dhobi, their istri guy to open up a specific cabinet and keep the pressed clothes inside. So there's no doorbells ringing in their house. You know, you have the entire main door is a cabinet, which is now mapped with a lot of functionality. So you can actually have a extremely functional main door, and takes care of all your, you know, all your chores and errands at that interface itself. This is the kids room. So we actually just worked on a full jungle gym, and we realized in our interview with the kids that they were both fighting about who's going to sleep up and who's going to sleep down in the bunk beds, right? So what we said is just give them the whole kit. Like they can now move their beds depending on where they want. They can set up their bed on the entire jungle gym. So in the day, it's just a play topography. They can, you know, situate themselves anywhere on that jungle gym, and you know, populate it with their own stuff. So they've also made their own ladders and everything after we handed over. That's like a small outside fit out. This is some random idea of Zamir's. He wanted to get a bulb to look at a plant, so that's his lamp. And that's the bedroom. So your reading lights are actually recessed into the bed, and they pop out on demand. And then you have a small copper disc that you can rotate to get, depending on a night lamp or a reading lamp, you just rotate the disc to create more light, less light kind of configuration. So this is a really fun fit out. I mean, so maybe that's like a little bit of it, but I'd like to maybe talk a little bit about some of the new stuff that we've been doing, which is this really interesting. Sorry, how are we doing on time, Sajid?
I think it's fine. Just we have like 15 minutes or something.
Go with the flow.
Okay, I'll skim through this part then. So some of the new stuff we've been doing is slightly more random. So we've been trying to work with this sort of emerging discipline of speculative fiction, which is really trying to create projects which don't exist and which may never exist, right? So one of the things that we started thinking about is, you know, when the Statue of Unity was announced in India. So it's obviously, you know, anyone's guess about the physical beauty of this man, and about why it needs to justify like a huge public cost expense on our skylines, right? And we started thinking about, like, you know, if the statue has that much public importance, you know, it's getting that much funding, it's doing all of these amazing things, why not make it also performative, right? So one of the things is that statues typically tend to only become symbols of political will, but they could also have an added functionality to it. So we thought if the government comes up with one bad idea, we should at least come up with 100 good ideas, right? So so we started looking at data in India. Like, so India is actually the world's fifth largest e-waste producer. So we said, you know, what if there's a Gandhi statue that gets slowly gold plated by the amount of gold that's coming off old PCBs? So the Gandhi statue sits on top of an old an e-waste mine, and the rescued gold from the PCB keeps coming and flecking onto the statue, so that when the statue is completely gold, you know that the city's rescued you know, that amount of PCBs. Then this is obviously the thing of putting a turbine inside Gandhi's dhoti was a childhood dream, right? So you actually can convert like a large Gandhi statue into you know, a wind harvesting kind of a situation with tidal energy for Bombay. This is the Gandhi desalination plant. So we started putting out a whole bunch of these. This is a fun one. This is Kasturba Gandhi's. It's a city server. So we are assuming that after in 2035. So all these are dated 2035. That's a year in which we're doing a lot of futures research. And the idea was that in the future, the city is going to be run by some form of algorithm. And when there are two algorithms that are competing to run the city, they play a high frequency game of Pac-Man on the facade. So you have these two competing Pac-Man games that are playing out, and whichever algorithm wins the Pac-Man game is the one who gets to run Bombay for the next week. So you have these sort of large data centers. Then this is the sort of pixel art Ambedkar kind of a mural. So at night it assembles into the Ambedkar mural, but in the day the locomotives are all over the city, kind of you know, servicing the city. And this is a fun one. This is actually a drone recharging station. So in the day you have a large statue, and at night it kind of becomes a massively dispersed kind of drone cloud. Okay, look who's here. And so this is some recent work at you know, in Goa at Chimbel. So this is some of the heritage work that Sajid was mentioning. Small break. So this is at one second. Patsy. Just 5 minutes, it's about to get over, right, Daddy? Cool. Sorry about that.
Yeah,
so
I bet
you
you
have
Purane paap. I have Purane paap.
So this is the sort of TCP department in Bombay. They've kind of you know, recently classified this ruins in Chimbel as a heritage structure. So we're partnering with a whole bunch of different heritage agencies in Goa to kind of do a deep dive research and see what are the possibilities of this, right? So this is interesting. It's like we started flying drones over these ruins in old Goa and started abstracting 3D models from them. So this is actually a process in game design called photogrammetry, which you can actually use a real world monument and abstract three-dimensional data from that. And what happens is, what we start doing is then building hypothetical scaffoldings over these old monuments. So what if you had to create the whole volume of the church, but use, you know, this is done through virtual reality. So we take these VR headsets and make the priests and the parish, you know, watch what a future monument could look like in the middle of the jungle. And that's like a simulation of what the church could actually look like once the jungle takes over again. So you have these large cathedrals in the middle of the jungle, which are creating the volume of the cathedral, but without imposing themselves on the landscape again. And to publicize this, what we did, started making fake news, right? So we started photoshopping all these situations in the Goa newspapers and spreading them on activist groups. So a lot of activist groups start feeling the itch that, you know, why is this not happened yet, right? So, and that's a fantastic emotion to work with, because they've already started imagining all the stuff that could happen with this monument in their own heads. So when you actually go in for meetings and, you know, present to these activist groups, they've already heard about it and they already feel, yeah, this is a great idea, to karna chahiye. So these fake news idea actually can be deployed really, really well as a design tool to kind of build consensus. So we just, you know, hypothetically announced that this museum is opening. It's a public heritage museum in Goa. Then this is their cultural showcase and Christmas night market. Then that's when it was announced as a 2021 outdoor venue partner for the IFFI in Goa. So you have this projection map facade. So some of these, you know, more random things, they find their way into activist groups and they become, you know, known as like the voice of the public. And about what public opinion actually means. So yeah, that's me. Thank you.
Arey, that ended too soon, man. No.
I put the share screen on.
Ayaz,
Hey, very cool.
Ayaz, so I always wanted to ask you that one time when we had bhang together, that was your first bhang. And mine, it was second. So you came out with this filter, which is, you
Oh,
asked me to
man.
remember
Oh.
that, Anuj, please.
Dude, we have to do that. देखो याद है क्या वो filter?
वो मेरे को याद है, एक्शन करके दिखा सकता हूँ, but I'm holding the phone, so I can't really. But I remember it was something like हाँ वो तू ये correct, ये वाला filter. So you kept on telling me, Anuj, just don't forget this वाला, ये वाला filter मुझे याद दिलाना. I always wanted to understand what was that filter inside your head. What was going on in your head?
No, so everything was melting from top to bottom ऐसा angle में. And I was like, if we can just get a Photoshop filter that simulates this, now we'll make like millions. Like, you know, like anyone who's had bhang will just like, ये मतलब this is the experience, ये Photoshop पे. करते हैं ना, अभी भी time है, अभी भी time है.
Yeah, crazy work, Ayaz. Really phenomenal work. Anuj, you want to handle the question answer session?
I don't see too many questions. Anybody, the people who want to ask questions can actually ask. Just unmute yourself and ask. That would be nice.
Or reactions. Now you can have pandemonium.
Awesome, that's right.
Hey,
Aditi, I wanted to ask a question. Aditi said she won't come on video. Aditi, it's time for you to unmute.
Anuj, I can't come on video at this exact moment, but I do have a question.
बोल दे अदिति कहाँ पे है तू अभी?
So, Ayaz,
she's in Ethiopia.
Ayaz, how long have we known each other? So we're batchmates, right? So we've known each other for 25 odd years, something like that.
25 long
Yeah.
years.
So my question is that what is your inspiration behind torturing me for such a long time with the same vigor and energy and enthusiasm that you show clearly towards your work? I just wanted to pick your brain a little bit about that.
There is an open folder on my
It's a
laptop
turning
all the
point,
time called Aditi.
It's a turning point.
Yeah.
I think
you know, one of the things that about Aditi is like she works really strangely on half information. That's something I've always explored. Like, so essentially, if you're able to say just the right amount of information, that makes her fill up the rest in her mind. Right. So, so once I think me and Shekhar had done this, where we told her in the PD studio that, you know, once the Earth is rotating every day, all the latitudes become longitudes and longitudes become latitudes.
I'm going to drown you out. That didn't happen.
Can you mute Aditi Dhar 1 second?
Okay, fine.
So,